and Brent crude oil has trading again up this morning, nearly another percent, well above $72 on Brent. We're up sort of 10% this week, at least since Tuesday, a straight nearly climb up a cliff face. And certainly since the start of the year, where we kicked off in January at close to $65 a barrel. It's been more or less a graph moving in one direction with some interruptions. Um, Let's kick off this morning in Dubai with Amina Bakr, head of Middle East Energy and OPEC Plus research at Kepler. Amina, we have been in this most forecasts for oil markets, including your own last week in IE week, and most of your peer group since the start of the year has pegged Brent crude oil average price for the 2026 to be sort of in the 60 to 65. Some are as bearish as 60, some are as bullish as 65. But nonetheless, that's sort of a consensus box where prices have been predicted to be. My question to you this morning is: once all this noise has passed on Iran, US, will we return to that sort of range bound price we were in before all of this kicked off?
That's a really good question, Sean. And I think, your question is, will the market go back to looking at fundamentals, minus the geopolitical risk that we're seeing? As you rightfully said, Brent is trading at around 72 now. I mean, previous to the statement that we saw from Trump yesterday, already we had a maybe $4 or $5 risk premium on flat prices. Now it's a little bit higher than that. And it depends what happens with this conflict. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. Trump gave a timeline. He said in 10 days, he'll make up his mind on whether to strike Iran or not. On a kind of negotiations side of things don't look too great. I'm not seeing a lot of compromises being made or anything getting closer to being agreed. So that adds that layer of uncertainty. And if the US really want to uproot the Iranian regime, it's going to take more than just one strike and declaring immediate victory that they've destroyed a nuclear program or whatever it is. This is going to be a bit of a longer conflict, and that will have an impact on prices, even if we don't see a direct hit on supplies. Last year we had a very brief conflict. Prices went up and then they went down again because the US immediately said it's just one and done and we're not going to be striking again. This is a completely different situation. So it all depends how it plays out. But if it's just a matter of if it does get resolved and we do have a deal, or if it's just something very, very brief and minimal, I do expect prices to come down, or at least that geopolitical premium to ease.
Rustin Edwards, head of sales and marketing at VKG GmbH. I was thinking to start the conversation in Geneva or here in the Gulf, as we're closer to the armada vessels outside the window here. But Rustin, you're closer to the negotiations, which of course are taking place in Geneva. Your sense of where that's going, in the last few days, we were kind of living in an oil market that we were, at least I was taking some comfort in, that was sort of signaling that despite all the noise, there won't be any drama. But now I'm getting a little nervous that the price is showing us that the market now thinks there's a bit of drama. You guys aren't doing your usual Geneva calm everybody down thing.
Well, I mean, Geneva can only calm people down as much as they want to eat some fondue. However, no, it is, kidding aside, it is a bit of a, Iran, they're very astute negotiators. They're always tough negotiators. And I think, what we're seeing coming out of the latest set of talks, Iran has basically posted their position as being the conciliatory one, the one that wants to negotiate. But as typical fashion, they want to drag out the negotiations as long as possible. And the Trump administration, as much as they're trying to quote unquote bring peace to the world, they don't have a very long attention span when it comes to negotiations. And so the timelines being set, this 10-day window of getting a deal done, Well, that's a 10-day window, which probably has already been ticking down since Monday. The rest of the carrier strike groups show up probably tonight, if not tomorrow, in region. And so at that point, all the pieces will be on the table for something to happen if they want to go kinetic and want to make it militarily. So it is a question of how long can Iran keep Trump at the table, or Trump's envoys at the table, and keep talking. But we saw back in June that didn't help. They were at the table talking when the missiles started flying. So we'll see what happens.
Let's welcome Zoe Upson, founder of Freight and Commodity Talent. Zoe, welcome. I think this might
Thank
be your
you.
first appearance on the
It is.
podcast. And nobody better. I mean, when this comes down to it, ultimately, we talk a lot around the subject of this oil market and all of the factors that impact. What really matters is, what ship owners are going to do and what they're feeling, and those that are actually moving the products and the crude in and out of these very critical waters. And so my question to you is, how is the risk perception among ship owners changing with these military buildups and naval drills near what are ultimately significant shipping lanes?
Yeah, I mean, it's something now that I'm seeing as it's a new normal. Historically with shipping, something would happen, the market would react accordingly. But I think given the risk, given like you say, the naval infrastructure that's going in, all of a sudden the shipping lanes are being stopped so they can have military practices. And it's the safety of the seafarers, it's the insurance, it's the implications for capital, it's the operation, the trade fragmentation. And this is becoming just something that ship owners is a daily practice now.
We've
I
seen
think
around the Red Sea that the shipping had an alternative, right? The troubles in the straits there, they had the option to go around Africa, a longer journey, obviously more expensive, more time, but
right,
ultimately
yeah,
there was an alternative. There's very little alternative coming in and
very
out of
little.
the Gulf, and in that sense, so far business as usual.
Well, I mean, obviously we're seeing the freight rates going through the roof. It sounds awful to say, but when problems and geopolitical risks and issues like, potentially where's the alternative route, the industry kind of has a better time. It sounds awful, but that does happen. And yeah, at the moment, we're seeing increase in rates, tanker freight volumes, a lot of volatility. So there is, it sounds awful to say the word positive. I don't want to say it's a positive at all because it's obviously such a nervous
Well, of
time.
course,
But
if you're selling oil, $72 is a lot more income than $62. It's just the fact of it. You'd want it for more fundamental reasons. I mean,
right,
ultimately, I mean, as we look and as Kepler looks at this equation, I think about, this conflict with Iran and the US, or this face-off, is that when you come to the ground here and you sort of look at this from a 5,000-foot view, it feels like there's a lot of complications in the region, but no real appetite or winner for this kind of a face-off turning kinetic. But it's hard to see the logic in it, is my point. And so the call might be that it won't happen. But when you go up the sort of 10,000-foot view and you get the global scale and you think China versus US, cutting Venezuela off from China oil supplies, now cutting off Iran. And when you think of this bigger global picture, while the local reasons might seem not present, when you take the big picture, the global picture, it starts to look like, well, maybe they will do it. Your thoughts of looking at this face-off and making an analysis based on the sort of scale of a global versus regional view?
No, there's another view as well, Sean, that you missed. I mean, the view of the Iranian people living in Iran and how much they are suffering in day-to-day life, just affording normal things like food, sending their kids to school, all of that. I mean, it's a struggle for many, many families. And I think we know many of our friends that live here and in the Gulf region that have families there. So it's been very, very difficult. And this regime has not been an easy one to live under. So I think the Iranian people deserve a lot better. How that happens now, this is the big question here, whether you need intervention from outside or whether it could happen from within Iran. We already saw, I mean, the regime cracked down quite hardly on all the protesters, so that wasn't a success. But foreign intervention, whether you're pro or against it, this is another story. And you're right. I mean, countries in the region, if I'm looking at countries like Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and so on, they really don't want this thing to explode because it's just going to harm their own. I mean, it's going to be a spillover, and replacing the Iranian regime is not an easy task here. It's a lot more complicated. It's not like in Venezuela where they picked up Maduro and flew him out. And I mean, Iran is a completely different situation, and I think Trump and from his aides understands that. The very, very big picture of, hurting China, yes, yeah, you can see it from that lens. And this is what Trump is trying to do as well with Venezuela. But I think he needs to realize that sanctions do hurt these countries to some extent. I'm talking about Russia, Iran, Venezuela, but they benefit the US's biggest economic rivals, China, and if they see India as competition as well. So removing sanctions, I mean, if Trump does manage to have some kind of pact or deal with Putin and ending the conflict in Ukraine, that would impact buying and prices and the discounts being offered into China. So big picture, I think, yeah, sanctions aren't great in the sense that, they are helping China's economy.
Rustin, your thoughts on that, taking the bigger picture view here. I mean, as much as the narrative at the moment, Iran's nuclear program, I'm surprised they've any nuclear program left at this point. But where do you think is driving the sort of the Trump North Star on this? Is there a connective tissue with the policies around Venezuela, this sort of energy dominance? Your thoughts on that, the thesis of this is all about China, US?
Well, actually, I'm going to take a different tact. I'm going to say that, the way I see this might actually be playing against an overarching play against Russia. Because when you think about the competitive factors of the cheap crude going to our competitors, what drives that cheap crude is the pool of sanctioned oil that's being offered into those marketplaces. Iran, Venezuela, Russia. So if you start eliminating those points of view where now that oil that has been sanctioned is no longer sanctioned available in a commercial market, that puts downward pressure on the Russian economy because they're losing their ability to move their oil, especially if Iranian oil becomes commercially available. Iran can easily, if everything happens quickly, hopefully nothing happens, but if something does happen and it happens quickly, Iran could easily ramp up their production from their current exports from currently about 1.2 million up to almost 3 million barrels a day. So you could theoretically flood the market and push Russian crude out of the picture. So that leaves Russia with only one outlet, China. And so Russia becomes subservient to China. So this all puts potentially more economic pressure on the Russian regime, which could force them to come to the table and end the war in Ukraine.
Zoe, you've been tracking and been very much involved in the build-up here of in the Gulf and in the UAE, the new energy and commodities trading industry, whether it be in the broking, shipping, or oil and products trading and so on. Most of the world's biggest energy trading companies and now the national energy trading companies have all set up desks and are attracting talent from all over the world. Now, we might be used to some of this turbulence. Obviously, the international trading community is not. They're used to the peace and quiet as we're seeing in Geneva. That is there where Rustin is enjoying himself with his fondue. But How do you think this all plays out to the momentum of that sort of buildup of this economic industry here, given this turbulence? Of course, it's part of the business, but ultimately not familiar from the point of view of that community.
Yeah, I mean, I think really we saw the domino effects coming initially from the brokers, right? A lot of them were collecting bonuses out here. They saw that initial shift, and they, I believe, were the first ones that sort of came here. We had it obviously Singapore, a lot of expats weren't really happy with the situation with COVID, and then therefore we had a lot of talent come that way. So that sort of like fomented the foundation. And then from that, and as the Gulf has developed, we then saw, I was saying to Rustin earlier, not a lot of the trading houses have as big talent pools here, and not a lot have relocated, and we are struggling to get talent from Geneva to come over to the Gulf region. But I mean, huge investment here. And obviously, once we get that capital flow, once things start moving, we really do see the talent coming across. A lot of traders now are looking to relocate here, have relocated here. And you've got this now. The freight markets are volatile. Energy trading desks are expanding. They are expanding over here. And then you see the competition. We're talking about state-owned oil companies. They're coming now into markets that they haven't classically been in. Hedge funds are now coming into markets that they haven't classically been in. So you see this expansion and this pull for talent, and so much is coming here, right?
And
So
the turbulence we've seen and we're seeing at the moment, obviously very big geopolitical noise, but obviously last year there was a war, Israel, US attacking
yeah.
Iran. Is any of that discouraging? Does it become an issue, or it just passes?
An issue when it comes to hiring, no, but we do see, and particularly, I have seen quite a few nervous traders lately. I'm not obviously going to name any names, but a few people, they're coming to me. I'm not a trader myself, but so it's harder to make money these days. And even though we have all this geopolitical risk, sometimes that is counterproductive to the trading, right? And they're finding it a bit difficult to make money like they used to. This is what I'm hearing, and a little bit nervous with this volatility, right? And a lot of nervousness with new players. And some people move from trading houses to hedge funds, but that can turn around quite promptly if the P&Ls aren't there. So trading houses seem to be the more popular choice when it comes to talent to go there. So I think, even though, I'm saying earlier, volatility can be exciting for markets, it can also make talent quite nervous. Not the broking houses. I mean, they have had probably the most phenomenal years, and they are expanding so rapidly across all markets. Like, my phone goes off, or we're setting up a new desk in Dubai, we're setting up a new gas desk, we're setting up the broking desks. I think I have, for Tanker FFA in particular, maybe we'll talk about this at another point, but that market in particular, I think I have 5 broking shops wanting desks at one stage, and majority of them do now want to shift the location, if they can, potentially, to have set up their desks here in the Middle East.
I suppose it'll be a benchmark if we finally get Rustin Edwards to move out here. But Amina, one of the things about this situation with Iran, and obviously we're seeing it already coming with Venezuela, and that is that with the sanctions lifted on Venezuela, with the return of Venezuela to the sort of out of the sanctioned oil world and the dark fleet, and an increasing of supply into the sort of quote unquote legal corridors. And we may see the same happen with Iran. Whatever happens in this next few weeks, either conflict or settlement, you would imagine the other side of that mountain is free flowing, sanction free Iranian oil. How does that look like from a supply point of view, do you think? And what challenges does it present to OPEC at a time when they're trying to normalize quotas to a new base level?
I don't think it's a immediate concern, Sean. I mean, even if we're talking about Venezuela's production, it's not overnight. I mean, despite the big headlines that we've read, it's not supply that's going to come online immediately, and it's not in great volumes. So the group is not too concerned about that. But overall, I mean, last year there was this fear of a mega glut, and people were talking about 3 to 4 million barrels of excess supply in the market. Now those numbers have come down, and I think consensus is closer to maybe 1.5 million barrels a day for this year. So that in itself, I mean, that oversupply, I think is a bullish factor compared to the 3 and 4 million oversupply that we were talking about earlier. And what I found during IE week, I mean, traders were split. It was a very, I mean, interesting debate to have. Some really believed that this market is going to turn very, very bearish soon, and the others were like, no, it's completely moving in the opposite direction. So, but what I'm
Well, one
seeing,
of the data points that I took away was from your session where you guys put up the slide showing the how much the idle capacity had declined in the last year. Obviously, with the OPEC increases last year, we're down to nearly under 4 million barrels of idle available capacity. That's a pretty increasingly tight space.
it is. I mean, if we do get a disruption from anywhere in the world, and let's look at a disruption maybe from Iran. I mean, Hormuz is a completely different story, and we won't get into it because nobody can replace those volumes. But even if we're talking about a smaller volume, the immediate, I mean, you have spare capacity within the OPEC Plus group, which is maybe 3.5 million barrels per day currently. It could be even lower than that because immediate spare capacity, maybe Saudi Arabia and the UAE are the only ones that could react fast. So that tight spare capacity, I think, is not something that the markets is paying attention to. And I think it will be concluded as well with the group's exercise this year in reestablishing the baselines, looking at capacities. We'll really get to find out more transparently what is the spare capacity left in the system. But back to the traders' behavior, Sean, I think, I mean, a lot of traders got burnt last year. So what I'm seeing is that they're too scared to be too bearish in this market. So behavior-wise, nobody is expressing their bearishness until we see a kind of resolution to the big geopolitical issues around the world, not just in the Middle East.
Let's go to the survey question, which sort of tackles a little bit of what we were talking about at the beginning. Brent crude oil prices will return to $60-$65 range once US-Iran storm passes. Rustin, speaking as we were a little earlier to the shipping and to the point there with Amina, that as we get, you know, for better or worse, ultimately, Venezuela, whatever the reasons, it's resulted in the U.S. sort of taking a bigger grip on the oil industry there and bringing it out from the cold into sort of normal channels. Iran could do the same if indeed they find a resolution in either direction. Where does that send the direction, do you think, for what became one of the biggest stories last year, the dark fleet, the scale in which the amount of sanctioned barrels are floating on the water still to this day, 100 million plus barrels. Your thoughts of these developments impacting the shrinking of the dark fleet, the sanctioned oil, and the impact for the markets to consider over the course of the 12 months? You're on mute, Martin.
Haven't heard that in a long time since COVID. You're on mute.
Yes, you're on mute.
The biggest impact is going to be freight's going to remain strong, especially for your long haul, large vessel carriers. I mean, VLCCs being booked at $120,000 a day TCE equivalents. You got Suezmax is very strong as well. A arbitrage from Rotterdam to Singapore, roughly $6.3 million, which is some of the highest levels since COVID. As we move more barrels back into the clean fleet, the problem the clean fleet has is the availability of tonnage. A lot of the ships that are currently in the dark fleet will have a very hard time coming back into the clean fleet, either A, because they're too old, or B, they've been trading in the sanctioned trade so far that nobody will charter them because they've been busy in the dark market. So there will be a squeeze on freight if there's something with Iran that causes a complete change and a reduction of sanctions on Iran. And so I would be surprised to see VLCCs creep up closer to $200,000 a day TCEs. And you see a lot of people already getting involved into that trade. Sonacor has made a huge play here with Aponte from MSC in acquiring almost 12% of the global VLCC fleet. So, people are positioning themselves for a massive rally in freight, which I think is going to happen once all this
Even
kicks off.
I mean, I find that sort of counterintuitive. My sense was, well, if more of these dark fleet ships are coming back into the normal fleet, there'll be
Well,
more
but
supply available.
But that's the problem. They won't come back. They're
Ah,
too old,
ah.
or they've been trading so much in the dark fleet that nobody will charter them. But you have to think of the whole compliance that you have around chartering. You have to do KYC. If the counterparty has been willing to trade in sanctioned cargoes or trade below price cap, then obviously there's a problem with that owner, and that owner's ships will not be used in the clean trade. So from the regulatory standpoint, that's one issue. From the age standpoint, that's another issue. And so from that
So what,
point,
there's no forgiveness, or there's no like you were
in,
naughty, so now you
in
can
this
be
day and age,
unnaughty?
it's very hard to forgive because you have the knock-on issues with your reputation in the marketplace. I mean, so will a Trafigura, Vitol, one of the main trade houses, they might do it, but they'll do it only for a limited locational voyage, not for a long-haul voyage.
Zoe, looking at the sort of,
Mm.
as you were mentioning earlier, the convergence of the energy and freight markets, alongside we're seeing obviously increasingly financial participation such as hedge funds coming into the trading space, automating AI, taking some of the physical energy trading lunch a little bit. How is that altering the risk appetite, trading behavior? Is it yet? Will it be more pronounced as we go forward?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think, we're seeing the hedge funds coming in, and that's really changed and shifted a lot of markets. Now, my background's on the FFA side of things. So historically, that really ramped up the dry FFA market. So the trading volumes on the derivatives versus the physical were like 3, now maybe 5 times the volumes. Tanker FFA classically hasn't been at those volumes, and that's one that I think we're going to see as the hedge funds continue to come in. It's my market that I think is we're going to see the main growth in, right? They will come in on more of a speculative basis, but from a hedging side, with everything going on, I think we're going to see more market players coming in. Reason why I think the volumes have never really been there is this confusion with world scale to dollar per ton. That's been avoided. I think, as well, I think it's going to be really interesting to look at the leadership side of things as well. When looking at this amalgamation, let's call it, of energy and freight. One thing in particular I think is really interesting is
When
particularly in
you
the
say
shipping.
leadership, do you mean the actual business heads, the CEOs,
Yes, CEOs, yeah, for sure. Board members.
why is that relevant for risk appetite?
Because I think now it's just such a key. Having a lot of shipping companies haven't really had someone with geopolitical expertise classically always, and we're seeing a huge increase in that because it's such a key part of the risk now, right? So there's that side of things. So I think we are going to see education there. There will be a lot of performance pressure. As I said, a lot of traders are quite nervous. And I think we're going to see, yeah, I think it's going to be a very exciting, interesting time over the next 12 months, particularly when it comes down to the traders.
Amina, just finishing off with you on the outlook for OPEC Plus next decision. They're due to meet later this month, early next month, and the next 2 weeks, I believe, to make the decisions about the second quarter and beyond. And we've had a pause in the OPEC Plus increases that we saw through the much of last year, where they returned, I think, 2+ million barrels a day of quotas. They've paused that now. What do you think the outlook is at this time, the ability to make such decisions with the cloud of the Iran-US uncertainty?
Definitely adds a lot of kind of uncertainty around what step they're going to take next. As you said, the meeting's happening on the 1st of March. So our base case at Kepler for now is just seeing them return some of the unwinding like gradually. We're talking about, again, increments of 137,000 barrels. But from what I understand within delegations, they haven't been discussing this yet. It's still not clear what they would, what step they would take next. And it's also possible that they decide to hold off because of a lot of uncertainty. They would want more clarity before, deciding to unwind more. But for the time being, as a kind of Kepler base case, we have them gradually unwinding in Q2.
The 130,000 barrels through the rest of the year. So overwhelming view in this room that prices will return to normal, or sort of the window they've been in for much of the last number of months once this US-Iran storm passes. If indeed, let's hope it never even happens. And if it happens and is brief. We'll leave it there. Brent crude oil trading firmly above $72 a barrel, very likely to finish out the week above $70 as things stand. It'll be the first time it's done that for a while, this month anyway, and everybody keeps their focus on Geneva. We'll have to send our Rustin Edwards, foreign correspondent in Geneva, down to the offices there, send us little flash headlines. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate your insights this morning. Have a great weekend. Ramadan Kareem to everybody that is participating in the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Amina Bakr, shukran. Thank you. Zoe Upson, thank you very much.
Thank
And Rustin
you.
Edwards, lovely to have you back. Take care. Have a good weekend. All the best.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.